It's actually pretty good.
So good afternoon and welcome.
He's super healthy.
So we'll start our Tennessee Higher Education Commission meeting, and first order of business is Ms. Lavella Carter will call the roll.
Mr. Boyd?
Here.
Mr. Cope? Here. Mr. Fisher? Secretary Hargett? Ms. Hayes? Here. Mr. Kinsey?
Here.
Ms. Coben? Here. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Treasurer Lillard?
Here.
Mr. Martin? Here. Ms. Martin? Here. Dr. Nixon?
Here.
Mayor Wharton? Comptroller Wilson?
Here as well.
It's that mushroom.
He had the magic mushroom sandwich.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So first off, welcome. I think most everybody was here for the working session. Maybe a few weren't, but I do want to recognize a couple of, or actually at least one visiting guest today, Mr. Mark Schneider with College Measures from DC, who has done a lot of work with the Tennessee Higher Education Commission on helping develop scorecards and determining student success post-graduation, among many other things. And so he'll be helping in a presentation a bit later on today. Earlier today at the working session, I introduced Dennis Jones, who had to leave, unfortunately, but Dennis was with the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, and he's going to be a regular member of all of our meetings going forward as an advisor. And I think he had just a great contribution earlier today, so we're glad to have him as part of the commission. We also have, for those that weren't here this morning, just a couple of notes. One is that Dr. Gary Nixon is attending his last commission meeting. He's retiring after 44 years of great service to our state, so thank you for that. And then, as we talked about in the working session, that Dr. Rich Rhoda, who has been serving with us for 18, I've heard different numbers now, 18 years.
Yeah, well, 17.
17 plus years, is retiring, well-deserved retirement, and will be leaving us at December 31. And we'll have a few more comments about that later. The first order of business is the adoption of the agenda, and I'd like to call for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Actually, Dr. Rhoda continued to advise me and pointed out that I missed someone that I did talk about earlier this morning, but skipped now, and that's our new commission member, Bill Lee, who is now has joined the commission. Bill has a company, the Lee Company, that does heating and air for residential and commercial. His family's been doing this for 70 years, third generation, and we're really from Franklin, Tennessee, and we're really excited to actually from Fernvale, Tennessee, I should say more specifically, and really excited to have him on our commission. Thanks, Bill. The next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. So can I call for a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So according to the agenda that we just approved, the next item would be the chairman's report, but I'm going to actually deviate from the agenda with an additional motion, and this one is at the recommendation and suggestion of our governor. And the motion is that we make Dr. Rich Rhoda the Executive Director Emeritus, the first in our state's history in that position. And before we have the discussion and vote, I will point out that it is an honorary position. So the way I'm interpreting this is that we can still have him come to all the meetings, advise us, but we just don't have to pay him. So it's a win-win for everybody. So I motion that we appoint Dr. Rich Rhoda Executive Director Emeritus. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, sir.
Well, thank you.
And so I mentioned this at the work session that we were working on a celebratory dinner, and Lavella has been working on a date, so it is January 8th. If we don't have the location determined yet, if we're going to send out mass invitations, all of you will be included. If we have only 3 or 4 people responding, then we'll be having the dinner at Dr. Rhoda's house. If there's thousands, we'll be at the convention center. So we'll be, the location will be determined later, depending on the RSVPs, but we'll get that out to you shortly. So do hold your calendar for January 8th.
Mr. Chairman, does Dr. Rhoda have a few remarks he'd like to make?
How about if I do that?
Okay.
Thank you.
In lieu of a chairman's report, I'd like to have Mike Kraus share an update with us on the Drive 55. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman Boyd, Dr. Rhoda, and members of the Commission. Just wanted to come bring you a really quick update of where we are specifically with the Tennessee Promise, because we've just finished the application period, but also where we are more generally on the Drive to 55. The Tennessee Promise application closed at midnight on November 1st. I can tell you we have photographic documentation of Dr. Rhoda and myself standing in the call center at midnight when it closed. Our final number exceeded even our wildest expectations. And before I share the number, I like to share this picture, because no matter what Tennessee Promise has or has not accomplished, I will tell you we have done one thing, and that is we have changed how students in Tennessee talk about going to college. Definitively changed it. This is a group of students lined up waiting to get in at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, mind you, teenagers gathered in one group before noon on a Saturday morning to apply for the Tennessee Promise. This line literally wrapped around the building at Motlow State. We have never had that level of buzz before. I would argue no other state has that right now. And so while we are only in the very early stages of this initiative, I do think it's worth taking a moment to just say this was good. And this changed, I think, for a lot of students, their trajectory. The final number ended up being 56,638 applicants. Our target was 25,000. Obviously, that's pretty remarkable. What's more remarkable, though, is when you look across the state, this was a pretty uniform application volume event. We had no county where less than 50% of the senior class applied. So said another way, in every single county, at least 50% of our seniors applied for the Tennessee Promise. We had 31 counties where 100% of seniors applied. And what we really ended up with, I think, is this. We know 56,000 students are not showing up to a community college next fall. But we do think that a lot of them have had an intentional conversation about a college choice early in their senior year that wasn't happening before. And we think that regardless of where we end up next fall, the needle for the state moves. And it is helpful to start off with a 56,000 student pool to draw from who have thought intentionally about what they want to do in higher education. We've had our first look at kind of what the data is around these students and who these students are that I want to share with you. And there are some very encouraging early signs. First, our gender split was 50-50 exactly. You can't make that up. That represents progress, though, because males in Tennessee higher education are underrepresented. So in this way, our applicant pool is actually moving us in the right direction where we'd like to be ultimately with enrollment. Our applicant pool for Tennessee Promise was more diverse than our current freshman class, and I think that's remarkable. 23% of our applicants were African American. Only 17% of our community college enrollees are African American. That is a great place to start to say we're reaching a group of students who may really need this. Same with our Hispanic students. Our Hispanic student application profile was higher than those of which enroll on a campus. Finally, we asked students to just give us a sense of where they think they're headed. Obviously, the overwhelming majority, about 73%, selected a community college, 10% selected a TCAT, which, by the way, just to put that in perspective, 5,600 students in Tennessee saying, I want to go to a TCAT and learn a trade is progress. And if that number even has significant attrition, it would be a very large increase to our incoming TCAT freshman class. I will share news both good and otherwise, so let me share some otherwise news. We had a lot of students indicate they wanted to go to a four-year school with the Tennessee Promise. That's not a bad thing, but going to a four-year school with the Tennessee Promise is coupled with a very large asterisk, and that is, at a four-year school, you can only pursue an associate's degree. So in the public world, that means TSU or Austin Peay, and in the private TECUA world, that means about 11 institutions. You can use the Tennessee Promise there, but you have to stay in an associate degree program, and you have to, you're not going to get tuition free. You're going to bring forward what you would have gotten at a community college. I was a little concerned when I saw that about 3,000 students applied for TSU because they only have one associate's degree program in dental hygiene. And I don't think we have 3,000 future hygienists on our hands. We may. But we're going to reach out to those students this week, actually, just to say, congrats. We do want to clarify what the exact policy parameters around this are. So I tell you that, and so you know I don't just always bring you the good news. I don't think that's bad news. I just think it means that we've got a little bit of communications work to do with students. What's next? Obviously, with Tennessee Promise, this is phase 1.1, and we have many more phases ahead. These students are going to have to go through their mentoring process. They're going to have to attend their meetings. They're going to have to do their community service. They're going to have to complete their FAFSA. And at the end of that continuum, absolutely, the Tennessee Promise awaits them. We are not slacking off at all. We're continuing our communications with students and school counselors to ensure that as many students as possible hit each of those marks. Complement to our colleges, our community colleges and technical colleges. I think Chancellor Morgan would echo this. Those campuses owned this program. Tennessee Promise succeeded because the community colleges, TCATs, and school counselors. And moving forward, I think it'll continue to succeed because of that ownership. We have other things, though. And I think I said last time I was before you that one of the perils of the Tennessee Promise is that people see that as the Drive to 55, which it is not. It is a component of the Drive to 55, and we are moving out smartly on all the other components even as we speak. First, Tennessee Reconnect. If you wanted to bury a piece of legislation, put it at the end of the Tennessee Promise bill. Tennessee Reconnect is a provision in Tennessee Promise that no one heard about, apparently, that will provide our adults that don't have a college degree the opportunity to return to a TCAT tuition-free. I think that's a remarkable opportunity, especially for displaced workers who need to hit reset on their career. And so we will be, just as vigorously as we were engaging with seniors in high school this fall, we'll be engaging with adults this spring around Tennessee Reconnect. The sales program. Been mentioned earlier. I'll just say Tennessee is changing how we handle math remediation fundamentally. This year we're serving over 12,000 students with this early math sales program. Last year, as you'll recall, the success rate was 66% completing all remediation before graduation. Our competency completion in sales is up 168% over last year right now. We're on station to make dramatic gains. And to me, the proof in the pudding of sales last year is, did remediation drop this year? Remediation in Tennessee community colleges dropped 17% in one semester. Chattanooga State Community College had to cancel 15 sections of remedial math and shift them to credit-bearing math, which I think is just a remarkable demonstration of progress. The LEAP program, $10 million committed by the governor and the General Assembly for us to award grants to really restructure how we think about creating a new academic program, and to create academic programs or refine current academic programs because an employer says, I need this, not because the college wanted to pursue it for some other reason. We had 33 applicants for LEAP grants. Scott Sloan here at THEC has been leading that work, and we will be going through the selection process shortly. I'll just tell you, if you read these proposals, they are absolutely validating as to why we launched LEAP. They are an employer saying, I haven't been able to hire the right people, and then a college saying, I can train those people. And that's the model. And it's really a pretty good parable for what Drive to 55 is about more largely. Really quickly, adult reclamation. Jessica mentioned this earlier. I think it's become an apocryphal tale that we have these 900,000 adults with some college and no degree. What are we going to do about it? What THEC and the governor's office are doing about it is we have asked the campuses to give us your data, and so you give us the files of all of your adults that have some college and no degree and are over halfway complete. We will wash that data for you and give you back an actionable file. I will tell you right now, the early work on it has been remarkable because we now know we have 127,000 adults who are over halfway complete but are not enrolled. And that is a really specific group that we can now target moving forward. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Application process for the Tennessee Promise, is there an indication of the students that they want to do they want to complete a 4-year program eventually?
There isn't, but I think we want to know of that 56,000 student pool, how many are actually shooting for that. And so we're going to do a sample, actually, of our applicants to say, do you want to attend a 4-year institution instantly or eventually? Are you thinking about doing a transfer pathway, or are you thinking about doing an Associate of Applied Science?
I think there'd be advantage to identifying those people really, really early.
Start looking at the pipeline.
Right, and being able
Yes,
to
sir.
say, I mean, it gives us some predictive index about what we may need to prepare for at the 4-year institutions, as well as the ability to counsel them very early to get on a pathway.
I think, in the application process, it's something that could be
Added.
and maybe
Easily
even,
added.
maybe even the institution of your preference. And so if the institution had that list of, here's 2,000 kids in the community system that's planning on coming to your institution, you might start having those communications with them.
I mean, our recruitment efforts right now at our places are trying to go to those community colleges that are close by and figure out, so who's out there that's coming into Promise that might be interested in moving on to the 4-year institution. It'd be good if we had the data set. It'd make it a lot easier.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
it's
and-
doable.
As part of Complete College Tennessee and subsequent implementation, I think we all have expanded significantly our dual admission agreements with between 2-year institutions, 4-year institutions. So the Tennessee Promise participants are students that once they indicate some level of interest, we can reach out to with the dual admission opportunity. Knoxville has been aggressive in creating or working with our colleges at our 4 years. So it creates a real potential to reach out and touch and make contact and engage a student early in their community college career, which makes it, we believe, much more likely that they will persist, if that is their intent, that they will persist to a 4-year institution.
Thanks for the opportunity to bring an update.
Thank you, Mike. And Mike covered everything, so the only thing everything I will say is just redundant, but just to highlight a couple of things. I think that sales program is maybe one of the most sung projects that we did last year. If there was only one thing that we did, I think I would have potentially picked that. If you have to take remedial math when you go to college, there's only a 5% chance that you graduate. By being able to fix this, it's going to have transformative impact on our state. So just really excited about the work that Mike and his team is doing on that. And then also on the Reconnect, he did mention, but I think that we've done so much to promote Tennessee Promise this year. Next year, equal amount of promotion needs to go toward Reconnect. Adults in our state just don't know about it. If you just anecdotally ask anybody that you see the rest of the day today, hey, have you heard of Reconnect? Nobody has. We need to get that word out and let adults know that they can go back to college if they want, free of charge at a TCAT, where they've got over an 80% success rate of probability of graduating and over a 90% chance of being placed in a job that they studied for. So it's a great opportunity that we got to really get behind. With that, I'd like to also, or next, have our Executive Director, Dr. Rich Rhoda, give his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I do have some remarks I'd like to make, but in first of that, talking about sales, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's another example of a program that started out as a pilot at really one institution, at Cleveland State Community College, and I've always attributed that to Carl Haidt, who was the president at the time. And at first it was kind of like, you got to be kidding. But he really stayed at that, and he had faculty around him, and then it spread to Chattanooga State, picked it up. So I think that's another good example of how big statewide initiatives can come to be. Mike, relatively accurate?
No, completely accurate.
Doesn't happen.
Success rate.
Okay, we've had a number of new people join the staff, changes in responsibilities. One new member particularly I want to introduce, as well as one departing staff member. Philip Kramer is with us. Philip joined the staff. He's the associate or the assistant counsel working with Scott Sloan, and he replaces Emily Petro, which many of you may remember is now an assistant DA in Cleveland, Tennessee. And then leaving the staff, Wilson Finch. Wilson by the door. Wilson has been with us 3 years, and I think he has come before the commission at meetings in the past, but he has worked directly with Jessica on the whole adult initiative. He was the assistant director for post-secondary completion initiatives. He is going on to a job with CALE, which is the national organization that has been one of the champions of adult education, more specifically prior learning assessment and those things. So it's a promotion for him, and he'll be doing many of the things on the national level he had been doing with us. So Wilson, congratulations. Also with us in kind of a borrowed capacity, but I want to recognize Paul Robertson, who was behind me. Good. Some of you may remember Paul. He's been in state government, I believe in F&A as well as the Treasurer's Office, but he's been working with us, kind of doing projects with Russ. And I mention that just because a lot of his work, talent and good work, showed up in the things that we're doing about out-of-state students and out-of-state tuition. And then also Lou Hanneman. He was here earlier. Lou is on loan to us from Dr. DiPietro these last few months, and we really have appreciated that. He's worked directly with Mike supporting the Drive to 55 and Tennessee Promise, but he has been a great asset around here. His UT perspective has been great. So, glad to get him back. Yeah, yeah, I know. Okay, so if I could and I want to thank all of you. Thank you for the emeritus designation. That means a lot. No tangible benefits notwithstanding. Yeah, no, they're very tangible. So just a few thoughts, and this is the kind of things I've said at other commission meetings. A little bit of context, have different meaning this time. But first, I want to start with an editorial comment. It's after the announcement that I'd be leaving, and a lot of really good people making comments. But it's been interesting. A lot of people will ask, like, well, now that you're leaving, don't you agree that the current structure of Tennessee higher education ought to be changed? And don't you think it's dysfunctional and whatever? So, for the record, absolutely not. I think it is the best structure for what we have in this state and what we need to do. Over the years, we've had studies and blue ribbon commissions to look at, do we have too many boards, too few boards? Should there be a different configuration? Some of those studies and requests for those studies incredibly well-intentioned. And I guess the last formal one we had was when Governor Sundquist came in, and Leonard Bradley was the vice chair of that commission. But anyway, so over time it's always been, well, we're concerned about quality, we're concerned about access, we're concerned about accountability, and we keep coming back to the current structure enables that, supports that. And to say another way, we haven't quite found a problem to which a reorganization is the solution. So I just want to mention that. I think the statewide boards, governing boards, the statewide coordinating board, it lends itself to, it almost insists upon cooperation and collaboration. All those things that we talked about earlier, what the next master plan, what's really gotten the current master plan up and running and succeeding, same thing in the future. So that's my editorial comment. So another thing, the obvious perhaps, this really is a defining moment, 2015 going forward, defining moment in the state of Tennessee, and for sure in higher education. Some extraordinary things are going on, some exciting things, obviously the Drive to 55 and the Tennessee Promise. There are challenges, how do you take a statistically undereducated state and increase the educational attainment in a way that makes sense, that's meaningful. We're battling things about college and career readiness, and how do you align standards with assessments, with all these other things. So that's the challenges. But, so I can say this now kind of reflecting. What do we have going for us that we really should make the most of? Just a handful of things. Of course, a sitting governor who has put higher education in the middle of the state agenda. It's to the best interest of the state and Tennesseans to have higher skill levels, and how are we going to do that? Higher education is the means to that end. And an immediate past governor that certainly understood that and set these things in motion. We have networks in place that weren't there all that long ago. John and I were on a panel earlier this week about student access and success, and one of the questions was, what's different now than 5 years ago? And it's just when you step back and look at it, just the emphasis that's placed on student access, student success, cooperation, K-12, higher education, within higher education, public, private, all those things, and they're in place. State level policy as it relates to the Drive to 55, starting with the Complete College Tennessee Act, and as we just mentioned earlier, the things that are now going to help the Drive to 55 that have been there. And now another dimension, and I don't think it can be overstated, the significance of what the Tennessee Promise says in terms of that another dimension, and that's community engagement, to take these statewide policies and implement them. You know, Mike talks about what it's like to work with county mayors who have never really been engaged in education conversations. But I think it's not going to be all that easy everywhere. But I think this is, again, it's happening in Tennessee. And the point is, I think we've been working toward this moment for quite some time. You know, the Tennessee Promise didn't just fall from the sky. As we had things to work with to make it successful. So, the Higher Education Commission, I'm taking a step back, but I really think this is the Commission's time. You know, there's an established role and scope for the Commission as a policy board. Under Randy's leadership, the notion of let's, elevate the board, have lay citizens truly engaged in and influencing some very important discussions in state policies. Again, we've got a network. It's been broadening. Mark is with us. Dennis was here earlier. SREB is full square behind, knows what we're doing. Key funders, whether it's Gates, Lumina, Ford, are all a part of this. So, again, the things we have to work with. All talked about the staff and said wonderful things because it is true, but I'll say it again, an incredibly talented, motivated, and well-grounded group of individuals who know who they are, they know who they're not. I will say this, they play for the love of the game, baseball metaphor. They play for each other, and it's just a great environment and a great culture. So last, on my part, I do want to thank the governor and the previous governors for their support, and all of you for the privilege of serving, and again, the emeritus status. I very much appreciate. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now I have one last item. And I told Mark to get warming up for this. So, back to reality. As Randy indicated, this is the last part of my report. I do want to ask Mark Snyder to make some remarks. He has a presentation on the work that he's been doing with us in Tennessee and where it's going forward, but it's all about college measures and putting together talk about tangible benefits of higher education. So, Mark?
So little did I know when I accepted this invitation to come here that this is going to be a farewell for Rich. The last report I did on Tennessee wage outcomes, and I'll give you the background on that in a minute. I opened the report by praising Tennessee for being a leader in higher education and data and accountability. And I had actually a big fight with the editorial people at AIR, which have to prove all the documents that for factual correctness and all that kind of stuff. And they said, "Where'd this sentence come from?" And I said, "Well, I wrote it." And they said, "But how could you say it?" And I said, "Because it's true." And again, I think that this is a wonderful state. I've been really fortunate to work here, to work with Rich and his staff. So I'm Mark Schneider, which has been made clear several times already. I work for a company called AR, American Institutes for Research, where I'm a vice president and institute fellow. And actually, you should hold out for a title like that. You know, a fellow rather than emeritus. I'm an emeritus professor, and like nothing happens with that one. The Institute Fellow, like really a much better deal. And I'm the president of College Measures. College Measures is a joint effort between AIR and another company in the UK. And actually, what we try to do is we work with states. We've worked with 7 states now to take their wage data and to track the students, the graduates, into the labor market and to find out if they're employed and how much they're earning. So a lot of the work traditionally has been about access and completion, but completion for what? And there are a lot of things that higher education does. Higher education about a lot of things like learning, for example. And there are many, many rewards for being highly educated. But the one thing that we focus on is whether or not students are earning money and how much are they earning. And actually, it's consistent with most states' policies because, in fact, higher education is viewed by governors, by most legislators as the most important human capital investment that they make. And actually, if you ask students what they want, the vast majority of them say they want good careers and good wages. And if you ask parents, all of them say that. You know, the last thing you want is your kid coming back after graduation, living in the basement or reclaiming their bedroom, which you turned into your office, and all of a sudden, like, you have to now share it with your 20-year-old daughter. I actually, when my daughters graduated from college, the deal I had with them was, I will pay for you not to come home. And fortunately, I didn't have to do it, but I was totally prepared to do it because they actually were they did fine. So what I'm talking about today is a focus on skills. And actually, in some ways, as someone said earlier, what we're looking for is really good marketable skills that people could finish their education, they can go out and they get jobs. And they can have good careers and be in the middle class. That's what the goal is. And there's a focus on skills. What are the kinds of skills that people need to actually accomplish that? It seems to me it's again just graduating is not enough. You have to graduate with the skills that you need to claim a place in the labor market. Let's see. I guess it's the page down. Click. Okay, so the bottom line is that skills matter. Okay, wait a second. THEC, I love it. Okay, everybody else seemed to figure that one out. Okay, so why do skills matter? Because they matter because of wages, right? That is, people with high skills usually command better wages. It matters because of underemployment. I'll show you some data on this. We know that many people are overqualified for their jobs. They don't get paid enough money. They don't use their skill sets enough. And quite frankly, the incidence of underemployment is quite high. And finally, it's about launching an adult life. We want our children to grow up and leave. And they have to launch. And actually one of the things that people talk about a lot right now is the failure to launch. And this has to do with a combination of tough job markets and student debt. And we really want to make sure that students that are graduating are in a position ultimately to launch an adult life. So one of the things that is another topic of conversation throughout the nation is the importance of 2-year technical degrees and the extent to which that these 2-year technical degrees have market value. And this is often wrapped up into this kind of discussion about mid-skills, right? The mid-skill workforce and how many people are needed to do, for example, high-tech manufacturing jobs where a 2-year degree is sufficient to get them into the market for a high-paying job, and you don't need a bachelor's degree for this. But you need is a set of skills, mid-skills, that can put you into high-paying jobs. So the bottom line on this discussion about mid-skills is that not everyone needs a bachelor's degree. So we have overemphasized, in my humble opinion, as they say, we have overemphasized the bachelor's degree as the goal point for most college students. And in fact, the bachelor's degree is the most commonly granted post-secondary credential in the United States. It's increasing at a slower rate than associate degrees or certificates, but the fact of the matter is that when we talk to students, almost all of them think that the bachelor's degree is the goal. And the fact of the matter is that there's this huge mid-skills training opportunity that's possible where students could do 2 years of training and they could end up with good jobs and be squarely in the middle class. And this is actually very important. And part of the reason the reason that we know it is the work that I've been doing with 7 states now. There are 6 states listed here. And the circles are the earnings. These are first-year earnings of students after they've completed different levels of degrees. So most states have different kinds of associate degrees. They have academic associate degrees that are transfer, and other states have, and they also have technical associate degrees. If you look down the list, you can see that, except in the state of Arkansas, the highest paid graduates, 1 year after graduation, I'm going to come back to that 1 year after graduation in a second, belong to associate degrees with technical associate degrees. So Virginia technical associate degrees, $38,500, more than the bachelor's degree and more than the credit associates, the bachelor credit, which is their transfer degrees. You can just go down the list. Texas technical associates, $50,000, $11,000 more than the bachelor's degree. So these are first year earnings. So one of the problems that I've had with a lot of this work was that we started this process of taking these wage data tied to program level information and putting it out in the public. Many states have merged these data, but very few of them were putting it into the public domain. So I got some money from the Lumina Foundation, and within a year, I had 5 states, including the state of Tennessee, which was the lead in this, putting out these first year wage data. The point here is that one of the criticisms that we got when we put these data out was that, sure, 1 year after graduation, of course, associate degree students are going to be making more. Wasn't of course, but now it became of course. But in the long run, bachelor degree students will out earn associate degrees. And the answer to this, of course, is based on the Census Bureau, which does in fact show that over time the bachelor's degree pays off higher than the associate's degree. However, that's on average. And the fact of the matter is, when we start looking at patterns in 5 years and even 10 years out, depending on the program of the associate's degree and the bachelor's degree, the fact is that associate degree graduates can, in fact, have strong earnings, stronger than many bachelor's degrees. Yes, sir.
So, as your central tendency,
It's the median.
right, and I assume they're normally distributed?
Yes. No, because it could be affected by the average is usually higher, as you know, for income. Okay, so let me just show you some data about wage growth. So we just put this out. This is the data that was that underlies EduTrends Tennessee. And basically what we looked at is the popular associate degrees. This table in the EduTrends data set, there's lots of stuff in there. So this is the first year median earnings and the 5th year median earnings by popular associate degrees. It shows in red, these are the earnings that are below the statewide median for associates. And there's also the statewide median for bachelor's degrees. So if you look, there are a couple of lessons here. So usually if you're low in year 1, you're also going to be below average in year 5, right? That in year 1, the median for associates was higher than the median for bachelor's degree. And in year 5, they're almost at the same level. So again, in the long run, 20 years, 30 years out, the bachelor's degree is going to be a useful degree and pay off more. But within 5 years, they're actually neck and neck. And if you look at the bottom set of programs, these are the programs with the highest earnings. The fact of the matter is 2 things there. One is that 5 years later, the median family income in Tennessee is $43,000. So most of these programs are putting students solidly in the middle class 5 years after graduation. And many of these programs are having graduates that out-earn, on average, the bachelor's degree. So there are associate degrees of value, and most of them are technical degrees. And basically, if you want to make money with associate's degree, you need to do one of two things. You either know how to fix things, right, technology, or you know how to fix people. And those are the two areas in which technical associate degrees turn out to be the most valuable. We could go to Texas, which actually has wage data up to 10 years out, and we are reporting that also. They're one of my clients' partner states. And the lesson here, again, is start low and end low. So most of the programs that are below average in year one, 10 years later, they're below average again. The exception is biology, and when you look at these data in more detail, it's because at the end of 10 years, enough of the biology graduates are in fact doctors, with increasing the average wages. If you look at marketing, that goes from fairly low to fairly high. And if you look at multidisciplinary studies, it starts off above the average for bachelors, but 10 years later, they're below average. The state of Texas got rid of its education programs, and in fact, most students that are going into education go through this multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary studies. So as you all know, the starting wage of teachers often is quite good, but they just don't get a lot of raises. So that explains why they're lagging. They're lagging other fields. But one of the other criticisms that I've gotten a lot for this work is that it takes liberal arts graduates a long time to get started, and if they are if they're a barrister in barista, in Starbucks, they'll be a barrister 10 years later. But the fact of the matter is that start low, end low, and that's pretty much what our data show. So what about underemployment? So this was data from PayScale, which payscale.com has a huge database. Maybe 3-4 million people by now have signed on and give information about their wages, their employment history. And this year they also asked them whether or not they felt that they were underemployed. A very interesting question. So the yellow side are the most underemployed majors according to PayScale, and then the right-hand side are the least underemployed majors. Again, this is from PayScale's survey. And these are, and this is by undergraduate major. So if you look at this, you can see that most of the underemployed majors, and most of the underemployment is really a function of feeling that they're underpaid, that they're not paid sufficiently. And that was the driving focus on what it means to say you're underemployed. So general studies, sociology, English language and literature, graphic design, liberal arts, education, psychology, all traditional liberal arts programs students tend to feel underemployed. If you look at the least underemployed, engineering, and more engineering. So and then mathematics and geology are areas in which people feel the least underemployed. So we need to be careful. Another criticism I always get is that, Mark, you hate the liberal arts. I don't hate the liberal arts. I have a liberal arts degree. My children have liberal arts degrees. Everybody I know has a liberal arts degree. But the fact of the matter is that there is a problem with the liberal arts in terms of wages and actually employment outcomes. And we just need to be careful about what these kinds of consistent data show about wages and underemployment. Okay, the third area in which we need to be really careful about and concerned about, is launching, whether or not students are learning anything and whether or not ultimately they're going to be able to launch adult lives. So This is Aaron Morosika's book, Academically Adrift, was a big hit a couple of years ago, and they followed it up with Aspiring Adults Adrift. And they've tracked these students that they interviewed a few years ago into the transition into the labor market. And what's happening to these students? Are they launching? And what have they learned? And are they launching? And is there any relationship between what you've learned and the critical skills you developed and your ability to launch an adult life? So they use CLA scores, the Collegiate Learning Assessment. As you know, there are several assessments out there that measure critical thinking skills and the analytic reasoning, problem solving, written communication skills, and they use CLA scores to track students and to see what the relationship is between what students learned and their ability to launch adult lives. So the first part is good. That is that students with skills were more likely to be employed and have launched their lives. But if you remember Academically Drift, the problem was that so few students have actually mastered those skills. The finding in this book that was actually disturbing was that students didn't show these skills. That didn't show these skills and were having problems in the job market. Still said that they received a great education. So even if our universities haven't delivered the critical learning skills and the education that should be associated with launching an adult life and skill sets that get you into the job market, most students still thought that they had a good education. So this leads to a question about what's the role of the faculty and actually institutions in this kind of process. So Dan Rosenzweig, who's the president and CEO of THEC, had a wonderful presentation last year at the Arizona State University Summit in the Desert. It's a really interesting meeting, and actually, you can find this presentation on the web. And basically, THEC did a study of a survey of students, faculty, and employers. And what they were looking for was the question of the alignment of what people expect from college. What are the mechanisms that are transmitting knowledge? Is there alignment or disalignment between what faculty, what employers, and what students expect to get out of college? So students said, 70% of students said what they wanted most was a good job and a good career. And so they wanted skills that employers would ultimately pay for. The faculty said that what they wanted to do is they wanted to create mini-me's. They wanted to create, 80% said they wanted to impart strong critical thinking skills. And I want to come back to this because there's going to be a huge fight about what critical thinking is and what are critical skills that are needed for the job market. And 65% of the faculty said exposure to new ideas. I'm sorry, I think I did. So when what THEC then did was they went to employers and they said, what are the kinds of skills that you need, that you look for when you're hiring? So this is a national sample of employers. What are the kinds of things that you're looking for to get people into your organization? What do they need to be able to show? And these are the critical skills. This survey identifies the critical skills that students need to succeed in the first job in an organization. So word processing, spreadsheet software, data analytics, database queries, personal information management, and presentation design. So these are the kinds of critical skills that employers say that they need to hire someone. And so what we're going to end up with is an interesting debate about what's critical skills. And, empirically, these are not rocket science, right? These are fundamental skills to survive in an office. They could be taught in any area. And the question is, are students actually getting these skills? So the next question is, do faculty have the right skills themselves to transmit these kinds of critical skills for the workplace? So there's a disconnect between the way in which we hire faculty and what the job market is. So faculty are trained. I was a faculty member for 35 years. I have all the bling that goes with it. They're trained, recruited, and promoted for conceptual skills that are not necessarily the skills that students need if they're not going into academia, if they're going into the job market. So there's a fundamental question here about the alignment between what faculty do, what faculty know, what faculty think, what faculty value, and the needs of the job market. In 2006, Lynn and Bozeman showed that 60% of college professors in STEM fields had no experience in industry. So faculty are often passing on conceptual and theoretical approaches without any hands-on experience in managing, selling, or actually building things. So it's not rocket science. No matter what major a student chooses, there are skills that are valued in the labor market, and every graduate, no matter what their field, liberal arts, STEM, political science, every graduate should have these tools in their skill set. These tools have to do with presentation. They have to do with fundamental database skills. In short, students probably need more time with, you probably recognize that first guy, Bill Gates, and less time with, who knows who that is? Marcel Proust. So more time with Bill and less time with parsing Proust. So thank you. Any questions?
Well, interesting comment regarding these last couple of slides about faculty. So I think you can have Marcel, but you better be asking your constituents out there that employ your students, are we hitting the mark or not? Then you have to be able to make adjustments on the management side of that unit to address the issues or shortfalls of the students in chemistry if they're going to be chemists at Eastman. So I think that public institutions particularly have advisory boards to these various colleges and components that end up saying to us, are we hitting the mark or aren't we? So there may not be a correlation with no industry experience or with the ability to deliver a graduate that's work ready. And I would agree that critical thinking skills, I think, are a tendency for faculty members to think about those. But on the other hand, we have a lot of people who tell us in these advisory groups at the University of Tennessee, that's one of the deficits we got with your students, the ability to work in teams, the ability to critically think in teams, the ability to take a problem and solve it. Those are key items.
So the question, I mean, there are many questions involved in here, right? So the question, of course, is under traditional arrangements in universities where faculty are, in many cases, independent entrepreneurs, hard to control, where departments are fiefdoms, what is the structure of, whether or not the structure of the university can be flexible enough to meet the changing demands.
I'll make one more comment and then I'll be quiet. So if you take a look at communications and information management, I think the curricula there, from the standpoint of faculty making adjustments, is most dynamic of any part of any one of our institutions, and I don't care which one you pick, because it's, think about what social media has done. I mean, today's Facebook in 2 years may not be what it is today, and Twitter may not be either, and then you're in Instagram, and so they have to teach differently almost immediately because of how fast that discipline's moving.
Right. But the question is, what about the other departments? What about the other disciplines? And are we actually imparting the sufficient skills, the right skills for students? So actually, the tie between universities and their local labor market is actually very interesting.
Very important.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually very interesting, and the question is to what extent that is actually happening across the board. So the best examples are usually in community colleges, where where they've always had a long commitment to servicing the local job market, and where these kinds of technical degrees could be changed really quickly. Regional campuses tend also to be increasingly under pressure because they're under enrolled, because they serve regional job markets. So they actually are the next wave, it seems, that of doing these kinds of linkages with the local job market. And then ultimately the flagships in the major research universities is, there's a different question about what their role is in the labor market.
Maybe one last question.
I'll be brief. So I'm one of those students who attends one of those regional universities as having a bit of kind of identity crisis, if you will, try to identify how do we have that more substantive connection with the region and the community and all that jazz. And so the things we're hearing from employers affirm what you have on the presentation. However, I just would like to kind of know maybe your definition of what critical thinking is as you kind of displayed it here, because from a lot of the employers we're speaking with from the UTC side is that some of the things that our graduates are lacking are those like critical thinking skills, the ability to work in a team, to adapt. It's great to create a presentation, but what do you do when the presentation blows up, you know? So I guess from your perspective, what actually is critical thinking, and are we coming at that definition from two different points? Because I can look at data that says employers love students who have great critical thinking skills and need those things. So.
Right. No, I think that, as I said, I think that the fight over, because critical thinking skills is a highly valued term, right? Everybody wants their students to have critical thinking skills. The faculty, everybody wants these critical thinking skills. The employers say they want students to have critical thinking skills. The question really becomes, what are those? Are they, if you do postmodern theory, that's critical thinking. But is that really the kind of, that goes under critical theory, right? And the question is that the kind of skills that are valued in the job market, or is it presentation skills, or is it these kinds of teamwork skills? So there's going to be a big, so we have a valued term that everybody wants, and then the question is, what does it really mean, and how are we going to train students to actually get those skills?
Thank you, and thank you, Mark. So obviously this is a robust discussion that we could spend days and days on, but I think it's great that Mark heated up, and thank you for that information. It's just two notes. One, so College Measures is going to be consulting with us on the scorecard that we're going to create, and we will have a lot of this data that Mark shared nationally in our state. So we'll be able to look at incomes by program, by institution, across our state in 1 year and 5 years out. So what we do with the data, how we adapt to it, will be to be determined, but at least we'll have very detailed data on student performance post-graduation. So I think this is it's going to be a great partnership. So you'll be seeing more of this. And then secondly, just again a comment about LEAP, but just thinking about some of the 23 or so 28 proposals that we had. I was really impressed by the types of proposals, at least the few that I've seen, and how our local regions local areas went to employers, like with Pellissippi, they went to Denza, one of our local manufacturers, and said, exactly what is it that you need to have trained to work in your factory 2 years from now? And they created a program to fit that employer's needs. So I think through LEAP and through other collaboration like that, we're going to be able to better align higher education with the workforce. So I'm optimistic about that. But anyway, again, great topic, and thanks for bringing that up. So now we'd like to move to the systems reports, and we'll start with Chancellor Morgan with a report for the Tennessee Board of Regents.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I suppose we'll all have opportunities to say things about Rich in the future, but I would just like to add to my appreciation for all he has done for the state of Tennessee over the many years that I have interacted with him. So thank you, Rich. I'll try to be brief. I will be brief in my remarks because I know we got many other things to do. But just to give you a little bit of update on some things that are going on in our system, and then a comment around Tennessee Promise. We are currently very actively engaged in holding a series of institutional briefings with our institutions. We did this last year. Decided for a variety of reasons to do it again this year. But it is an opportunity for us to spend about a half a day with each institution, really looking at a whole range of issues, particularly around strategic planning, both at the system office level as well as at the institutional level. Really very much oriented around initiatives that are underway at the system level and at the campus level to try to enhance our student success. And I'm very happy to report to you that there is incredible amount of work being done. We're well over halfway through, I guess, Tristan, with our briefings. We'll be finished. I think we finish up with Austin Peay sometime in early December. But earlier conversation we had that Dr. Deaton led around the outcome-based formula and the hope it would create incentives for various kinds of activities, I can report to you that those activities are in fact occurring. At each of the campuses we have visited, or each of the campuses we have visited with in this process, there are numerous things that are being done that are really very much designed around what will work in terms of improving our student success, our progression and completion, and it's very encouraging. And I think the more we learn, the more convinced we are that from a overarching policy standpoint, the state of Tennessee is headed in the right direction because it is working, and I think you will see that in the numbers that you will see in coming years. We're also working at a national level with the National Association of System Heads in some areas, and University of Tennessee is very much part of this, really around the notion of collective impact, the belief that if we as a group of systems are working toward the same objective using perhaps not the same but similar techniques, that what comes from that is really a larger benefit and more success than would come from each individual system pursuing strategies by themselves. And we have coalesced around really around 2 or 3 strategies that we are engaged in. One is using predictive analytics. In Tennessee, Dr. Denley and others in Tennessee have been leaders in that area, but using predictive analytics to help fashion programs and fashion intrusive advising systems and otherwise other kinds of interventions with students to try to enhance their success. Also looking at math pathways, remedial developmental math pathways, but trying to identify the right math for the right students and the programs that they're pursuing. Algebra is not for everybody, as it turns out. Quantitative reasoning, statistics are very valuable math pathways for many students depending on program. But then also looking at high-impact practices, trying to bring some definition to what those practices are so that we can begin to understand across states and across systems and across institutions as to exactly what the impact of those high-impact practices are. Creating a taxonomy for that is one of the 3 areas we're focused. But we're very hopeful that we'll get some significant support from Lumina, Gates, and others to help push that effort forward across the nation. In our system, we are focused on some very specific strategies that we think will help our students by the end of this year, the end of this calendar year. Tristan, keep me honest here, but by the end of December, every student in our universities and our community colleges will be in an area of academic focus, either in a particular program or an area of academic focus. There will be no more undeclared majors, per se, in our system. We think that's very important because we understand the data, I think, suggests very clearly that making no choice is really a bad choice when it comes to the student and their academic career. We are also, I think by fall of next year, we'll have at each of our institutions academic mapping programs in place so that a student will have early on in their career a specific map that shows exactly what they need to do by semester to finish on time. And we're quite excited about those initiatives and feel like that they really do help us move the needle in terms of student success. And finally, just around Tennessee Promise, I think it was said earlier, our community colleges, our TCATs, are extraordinarily excited about Tennessee Promise and have in fact adopted it as their own, which I think is probably what our chair had in mind when he encouraged the adoption of that program. Remains to be seen how many of those 57,000 applicants end up coming to our community colleges, particularly interested in those that would not have come absent Tennessee Promise. It'll take us some time to figure that out, I suspect. But we anticipate it'll be a significant number. And that's a really good thing. Students having the ability to pay fees to get the last dollar is a very, very good thing. The fact that it does change the conversation about college going in Tennessee, I think, will prove to be even more valuable over time than the funding assistance. However, I do think there's a tendency to think that, well, since students now have the dollars necessary to pay tuition, that solves any concern. The truth is that at our community colleges, about 45% of our cost of delivering service is funded not through tuition, but through state assistance. Now, arguably, and I think legitimately, we can talk about, well, what is the marginal, kind of the marginal cost of that next student? But I think I can say with a great deal of certainty that tuition alone is unlikely to provide the resources necessary for those students to be successful, particularly if we are successful through Tennessee Promise in attracting students into our schools that otherwise would be unlikely to come. To the extent we can attract large numbers of well-prepared students who are able to go straight into programs with a likelihood of success, then yeah, tuition might come close to paying the cost for those students. But we believe and we expect that a number of the students that will come to us, and we're happy to have them, come to us by virtue of Tennessee Promise, will be students that will be relatively high-need students, where this intensive advising, the wraparound services that are necessary to really ensure their success, or assure, insofar as possible, their success. So somehow we got to figure that out as to how we pay that portion of the cost that's not covered by tuition. The number is even higher in terms of a TCAT. In one of our TCATs, tuition covers slightly over 30% of the cost of those programs. So to the extent there's large numbers of increased enrollment in TCATs, it will certainly put pressure on our funding to be able to meet their needs and be successful with those students. So just to try to reinforce the notion that because students can pay their share doesn't necessarily mean that the other share is readily available to give them the kind of quality programming that they need. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will pass the baton to President DiPietro.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you from the University of Tennessee a couple of things. First would be some of the kudos that have happened lately. We had a remarkable day a couple of weeks ago at UT Knoxville, and the first naming of a college there. The College of Business has been named after James A. Haslam II. The governor was there, as you might expect, and it's a $50 million gift to name that college. It was one of those rare days, having been around higher education now probably almost 36 or 7 years, that I'll never forget. And the governor, in his remarks about, he had to wear his hat as a governor as well as his son and introduce his father, and about halfway through it he was stumbling emotionally to a certain extent, and he said, "Why did I ever volunteer for this?" He did a great job. And it's very special because of the way that gift came in. Having been a dean, people dream of the day as a dean when somebody names your college and provides you an endowment. I remember it vividly. For 10 years, I schlepped along as a dean, and I never made it happen. It was very good. It was really good to see this first naming of a college, but it's transformational in nature because of the way it was done. And that many donors want to earmark 5 professorships, 6 scholarships, a new boardroom, or a new teaching laboratory. But instead, what happened with this gift is they aligned it along goals for the college to be even more excellent than it is today, and said to whoever's in the dean's chair, currently Steve Magden, figure out how to get it there with these funds. That's powerful. It really reiterates the trust and relationship between the parties, and that's very, very important, and we always want to be good stewards. So there's a lot of heat on us to move that college further up in the ranking, as you might expect, but it was really a good day. some of the other things that have happened across the place. The UTC College of Business. This is a time of year where all these rankings came out. The Chattanooga campus's College of Business ranked among the top business schools in the nation by Bloomberg, as well as the Princeton Review. UTC was named the top 50 school in the U.S. News and World Report of regional universities. Martin was listed for the 9th straight year among America's 100 best college buys. Knoxville's College of Business undergraduate program ranked 27th among publics nationally by U.S. News and World Report. The MBA program there ranked 5th amongst publics. And the nuclear engineering department at Knoxville ranked 6th overall and 5th among publics. So there's a measure of quality in all those. Lastly, at Memphis, Le Bonheur continues to be recognized as, in 7 specialties, as one of the very finest children's hospitals in the nation. And it's UT Health Science Center doctors who largely staff that operation, and our students train there. I was in that hospital just a few days ago, and it continues to amaze me. And I always go home thinking, God forbid that one of my grandchildren got sick, but if they did, I'd take them to Memphis in a heartbeat if they were really, really sick, because they do amazing things there. The other thing that's happened just in the last few days, it appears Oak Ridge National Lab will now continue to have the world's fastest supercomputer. This one's named Summit. It's an extreme scale computer, they tell me, which means it works really, really fast, Gary. I forget the exact numbers. It's like it can make as many calculations as about a bajillion people in about half the time. It's really amazing. And it's very important to us because of what it does computationally. You have to ask yourself, why do you need the fastest computer? Well, you know, if you want to mash big data sets, and one of the initiatives that we're now trying to embark on, we've talked to our board about it, is personalized medicine. So we know the human genome, and we can map that, and we can map you or me. And each one of us, while the pharmaceutical companies, having done this work myself, do a bell-shaped curve around what dose you need of a drug to treat you properly, I might be different than Robert. And by getting a piece of your DNA, through the computational capabilities of a really fast supercomputer at extreme scale, you can figure that out. So you can say, Robert needs this dose, Joe needs this dose, or it may not work in me, but it'll work in him. Or what your disease tendencies are. Say you're 6 years old, and what we're hoping to do eventually is be able to profile enough people to realize whether you have a risk for metabolic disease, cancer, some other issue in your life, so we can be more vigilant in making sure that we take good care of you. So that's a unique resource we need with that supercomputer. I'm really glad about that. The enrollments at our place this fall have pretty much stayed steady state. Knoxville is a little up from the standpoint of enrollment. They have the largest freshman class ever because their graduation statistics continue to improve, as well as their retention rates, and so they have more capacity to make a class bigger, and that's good. At Martin, we have a downturn in enrollment there that's about 400 students. It's real money to that institution. That institution has revamped its recruiting approach, and as I mentioned earlier, this border issue is important to them from the standpoint of a possible fix. The push to increase STEM majors continues to be very, very important to our undergraduate campuses. We will even advance that more in the upcoming couple of years. We've increased that at Knoxville about 25 to 27% over the last 3 or 4 years. We need to do even better. We're convinced, as we heard earlier, those are disciplines like chemistry and engineering where there's lots of market demand and not a lot of people without a job that come out of those disciplines, and there's a need for that in Tennessee. I mean, I think the Volkswagen plant alone, not the plant, but instead the R&D facility announced a few months ago needs 200 engineers, sort of steady state, right away, and we're developing a relationship with them as well. The other thing I would talk about is, and I mentioned it at the last THEC meeting, we continue to be concerned about the third leg on this stool. The first 2 legs of the stool, as I see it, and we fully endorse them and support them and want to advance them, are the Tennessee Promise and the Drive to 55. The third leg is trying to figure out this business model. And that's been a major focus of our board over the last 6 to 8 months now. At the last meeting, I mentioned that I had come to the conclusion that our business model going forward needed a change. Dr. Fox had told us at our retreat, which we held and talked about this issue, that there really isn't a magic bullet on solving the revenue dilemma. That indeed higher education has a tendency to be the balancing act or a balancing wheel in the state's continued struggle to adequately fund us. So that prompted me to think, how do we figure this out on our own to a certain extent while still asking for your continued help and support? So we put together a budget advisory group to me. We are meeting every month with them. We're meeting with the steering committee almost weekly. We're modeling various scenarios, such as what we finally call 330 right now, which is a 3% cap on tuition. Not saying we're going to cap tuition, but saying if we had this model, 3% cap on tuition increases, a 3% inflationary rate, and no more state appropriations, just steady state on appropriations, where would we be in 10 years? We would be $155 million behind. Then we said to our units, what kinds of things would you do to fix that? And we're still working on that. We'll continue to work on it. We'll keep you briefed up about it. But, I think we have to do what I call finally the 4 E's. We have to be more entrepreneurial. We have to continue to be robust in being effective and efficient and being able to demonstrate we use our money wisely and that we don't have inefficiencies and close them whenever we find them so we have savings. And lastly, still continue to drive the whole enterprise toward excellence. So you'll have to stay tuned for more information about that. I think without doubt it's the right thing to do. The model may need to get bigger from the standpoint of what we currently construct at 330, and we'll continue to work through that. I have a short-term and long-term plan here. The short-term plan is the upcoming session and the kinds of things that we need to work on in our budget hearing for the coming session and the upcoming budget cycle, so to speak. And then a longer-term plan of trying to figure out what can we do to continue to fix it ourselves, given the circumstances that we face. To do anything else would be disingenuous to the University of Tennessee, and I love the place, and I won't do it to it. I think I could hang in there for 3 or 4 more years and not do it and probably be okay, but it's not my style, and it's not the place I want to leave my legacy, saying, well, I did okay, but, you're all behind, and the next guy or woman that you hire to do this job has got a huge hole to try to fill. So we've got to do it ourselves. It'll be tough work. It won't be fun, but it's the right thing to do. We have a great place. I'm pleased to work with you. I'm sorry that I got out of sorts this morning, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from. There's a significant amount of frustration that we feel from time to time as an institution, and it's reflecting on me right now. And if I offended anybody, I apologize. Thank you very much.
Well, as a alumni and volunteer for life, not offended and empathize with the challenges and fully supportive. And thanks for the great report from both of you. Actually, I wanted to follow up just a very brief comment with regards to the Tennessee Promise and how we plan on supporting these students once they get into school, because the Tennessee Promise isn't an access program, it's a success program. If it's just getting them into college, we failed. We've got to get them out of college. Dr. Fox, I think, has left, so I can disclose a report that he told me. It actually is mostly published, but they did a study for us a couple of years ago or a year ago on what $1,000 in scholarship money one should expect for additional college going. And on average, for every $1,000, and by the way, the Tennessee Promise is kind of based on the Tennessee Achieves model, which is just around $1,000 for a scholarship. That's usually what the average last dollar is. With $1,000, you should expect a 4% increase in the college going rate. Based on a longitudinal study that was done with the Tennessee Achieve student, we had a 20% increase in college going rate, so a 500% increase. More than what you would expect. And the reason for that, I'd like to suggest, is the mentoring component. Having mentors, volunteers from our community supporting these students makes all the difference in the world. So many people focus on the free college, and it's not, if we kind of weighted all the different aspects of the program, that's 5% of it. That's what gets people in the door. That's what gets them signing up or getting in the line. So it's good to get them in, but what gets them out is the mentoring. And the statistics on the demographics of the students, to Chancellor Morgan's point, they are generally significantly academically less prepared. However, as a result of the mentoring, as a result of some other supports, the Tennessee Achieves staff around the state to help support them, the extra support from the community colleges, an ambassador program. We have second-year students mentoring first-year students. As a result of all that, the graduation rate, the success rate is 50% greater with this more or less academically prepared group than the population at large. So while we do have lots of challenges, I think there is some precedent and some programs in place to hopefully help make those guys successful. And now with all the four-year schools also jumping in to help start developing that pipeline, I'm confident the future success will be even greater. So just want to make that additional comment. But great reports, thank you. Now we'd like to move on to some of the action items that we have. The first one is the post-secondary education authorization, and I would like to have Mrs. Stephanie Ballard-Chase, already there, come and give us a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Boyd, Dr. Roda, members of the Commission. I have one action item for your consideration today. The 8 new institutions listed in Section 1A1 and the 124 new programs listed in Section 1A2 have been recommended by the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions for initial authorization and approval, respectively. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we would like to have a recommendation from Dr. Russ Deaton on the state appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Roda, members of the Commission. This morning we had a lengthy and pretty detailed discussion of the 3 items that pertain to the budget. These are items 1B, 1C, and 1D in your packet. In a moment I'll summarize those and ask that they be taken up individually. But one area I did not cover this morning that I think bears observation right now, just briefly, is that this budget would mark the 5th year of the outcomes formula. And going into the spring, it is my hope that we engage in a review of that formula, as we do every year and typically every 5 years. The basic architecture probably would be similar, outcomes and weights and mission distinctiveness, but the policy details ought to be revisited. And in fact, that is a stance we ought to take on all these items and always be evaluating and making policy adjustments, whether it's on capital, tuition policy, or indeed on the formula. So as a preview of things to come, one common thread throughout these. Item 1B is the operating recommendations, Mr. Chairman. In summary, we are recommending $25.7 million to fund the incremental growth in the outcomes formula, as detailed in attachment 1B. 2 other items of note. One is an increase in operating funding for the non-formula units of about $10.5 million. And finally of note is funding for the TSAA, the State's Need-Based Grant Award, $29.4 million in funding. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, that's a summary of the operating recommendations for your consideration.
I have a motion to support or adopt this recommendation.
So moved.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Dr. Deaton, on student fee recommendations?
Our second item, student fee recommendations. The staff recommendation is a 0 to 4% tuition increase, an increase in the undergraduate maintenance fee for all sectors. Of note, it accompanies the first recommendation just adopted of $25.7 million in new operating funds.
Having a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So before we take up the next recommendation on capital projects, did want to make a note that in conversations with the Chancellor and the President and Dr. Deaton, I think we're going to convene some conversations around future planning and understanding about ways in which we'll allocate capital in the future and get work toward better alignment and collaboration. So we're going to be trying to schedule some meetings around that in the very near future.
Appreciate that.
Dr. Deaton?
Item 1D, capital recommendations in 3 parts: capital outlay, maintenance, and disclosed projects. The outlay, the top 6 projects, about $183 million total. Maintenance, 80 projects, $133 million across the 2 systems, as well as disclosed projects signaling an intent, possible intent to pursue, not involving state funds. That is a summary of item 1D for your consideration.
Motion to approve the recommendations? And a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Also, like to call Dr. Deaton again to propose a TCAT master plan.
You'll recall this was presented as information in the July commission meeting, and at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Woody Giles to come forward with TSW to present a revised version of that plan. It is, of course, linked up more directly now with the Capital Outlay project just approved. And with that, let me ask Woody to walk you through a brief overview of that plan.
All right, thank you, Russ. So if anyone's having deja vu with the presentation, that's right, we were here for information only, but we're here as an action item today. Again, my name is Woody. I'm with TSW Consultants for the TCAT Master Plan. It was a pleasure working with the state of Tennessee. It's exciting to be here today and just see the connection. We work in a lot of states around the South, and just seeing the connection between economic development and jobs and graduation and education and planning and all that stuff. It's great to be here. So also really enjoyed Mark's presentation. I should confess I am an English major. I do enjoy Proust, and we met some students in the course of this master plan that I think made a lot more than I did right after graduation. So TCAT statewide master plan, just want to start with a few facts about the TCAT system, some of which you're already familiar with. About 27,000 headcount students. Last academic year, 27 institutions, 32 owned sites, which is what the master plan focused on. About 1.7 million square feet of buildings, and 44 programs, depending on how you count that. The foundation for the master plan was the Tennessee Promise, Directive 55. There's been a lot of discussion about that today. We also had certain master plan goals that I'll go over. We started by looking at the statewide and regional context, got down to the space needs for each specific campus, and then focused on implementation. So I'll talk about all of those things today. The first thing is the TCAT's piece of the growth pie with the Drive to 55. This is showing aspirational growth in degrees awarded over a 20-year period. So we're right in the middle and expecting a bump. I was excited to hear that 5,600 students have expressed interest in TCAT degrees from Tennessee Promise. So it's not certain how that's going to work out yet, but we're excited that that's coming. The goal of the master plan is first to meet the needs of the existing students adequately, second to increase enrollment and completion consistent with the Drive to 55, and third to address the most serious facilities needs. We started, a statewide master plan is a little different from just a campus master plan, so we wanted to understand a lot of statewide trends that are going on. We spent a lot of time just looking at what's the state of the economy in Tennessee and sort of what's going on. We also did a lot of mapping and data just to look at what's going on in each region, population growth. We looked at educational attainment, where's that lower, that there might be a more significant need for technical degrees. We looked at unemployment, again, where's that higher, maybe there's a need for more training to be able to get access to some of those jobs. And we also drilled down to each region, got some great data from the State Department of Labor, and we're able to look at what's the growth projection within each region, what are jobs like and salaries in those regions, what are the industry sectors that maybe have a bigger share of the pie in those regions compared to the statewide average. And from that, we were able to look at a regional employment outlook. So this is an example of what that looked like for one of the campuses. This is a list of all the programs taught on one of the TCAT campuses, and you can see each has a graduates to jobs ratio, an average annual growth in jobs, and a job outlook. So that really varied. You can see business here had a lot fewer graduates than jobs, a 2.2% job growth, and so they get a rating of A, excellent for that degree. Some of the others are more competitive. I should mention this data, we weeded out all of the four-year degrees, so we're looking at just technical degrees, although including some of the private schools that do technical degrees, so some of that competition is showing up here. But this was an important tool for us as we were planning both to look at what's the job outlook for the programs that are already taught, but also what programs are doing well, are growing, that might not be taught at a campus in a particular region, so we could look at adding programs. The data told us a lot of stuff, but we couldn't learn everything from that, so we went to the campuses and said, we need you to tell us what's going on your campus. Had a lot of FaceTime with everybody, talked to more than 400 instructors, talked to the industry advisory boards and the directors on every single campus, and learned a lot that really helped inform the master plan. Got a lot of really detailed input about what's going on, what's happening in each of the campuses. Although I think my favorite comment that we got in one of the online surveys, most people put in all this information about their programs and industries and what was growing. And one of the surveys we got just said what they needed was more space, more money. So that's the executive summary from the campus's perspective of what they wanted from the master plan. So based on those comments in our data, we went to the next level, a little more detailed look at space needs analysis. As I mentioned last time, this involved redo of the THEC space model just to understand the space that's needed for each of these programs. The range of space is enormous. Unlike at a university, some of the technical programs require a lot of space, and some of the programs like business require just computers. So big variety there. We looked at what the enrollment is now on each campus, what the expected growth is based on what we heard from the campus and based on our numbers, and the space needs based on those calculations, as well as what the campuses said their space needs were. So all of this is by program, and you can see just a sample here. The bars going to the left show the programs that have a surplus of space today, and the bars going to the right show the programs that have a need for more space today. The bigger picture of needs wasn't just based on those numbers, but also a lot of discussions with campus directors and instructors, other things that we learned while we were on campus, and again, understanding things in terms of the regional context. So it may be that today there's a lot of space needed, but that program isn't doing well, is going to be retired, or that there's not a lot of space needed today, but that program's really booming, and so we need to account for that in the future. So there were these sort of three areas that we looked at as we plan for future needs. That led to a chapter in the master plan for each campus with recommendations for their needs. That included a migration plan, which you can see on the left, which is just saying if you have spaces that are less utilized or programs that have more than adequate space and other programs that need space, how can we move around the chess pieces to provide for those? And in a lot of cases, we're also recommending more buildings. So you can see on the right the expansion plan there that shows where any new buildings would go, site improvements, parking, land acquisition, the things you usually see in a master plan. So our recommendations got down to meeting the existing needs in the programs. We identified the highest need programs on each campus based on all of the pieces that we looked at. Also looking at how to increase enrollment. We know that's coming from the Directive 55. So what does that look like specifically on each campus? Which programs can accommodate that growth? Which programs need to be added to accommodate those new students? And then a whole slew of recommendations, as I mentioned, for migrations, expansions, site improvements, and in some cases looking at new sites and leased space. The other piece that I'll touch just briefly on is that we looked at the facilities statewide. We completely updated the facilities inventory for every campus in the state, and the most serious issues that we saw statewide were with the building enclosure. That's probably just that the average age of buildings is 37 years old, so a lot of the windows and facades are beginning to show issues. Air conditioning systems, I think also just the age of a lot of the buildings and systems and some of those other things. So there's not specific recommendations in the master plan to address that, but I know that TBR already is working on incorporating these into their maintenance plan. So a lot of these are no surprise, but it was the first sort of comprehensive statewide look at the TCAT facilities. There's also a list of just the lowest scoring buildings. What are the specific buildings that are in most need of repairs? So again, the goals of the master plan were to serve the existing students adequately, increase enrollment and completion, and address the most serious facilities needs. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much.
So before discussion, can I have a motion to accept the THEC recommendations for the TCAT master plan? And a second?
Second.
I just want to make a quick comment. I did get to see the detailed master plan from. I didn't get to see the other other 5 priorities in the capital plan, but I did get to review with David Gregory and Vice Chancellor King the plans for the TCATs. And just I guess to state the obvious, but this is these schools deliver the students to the jobs that are most in need right now, or some of the most in need. They have over 90%. The last number I think I heard was 92% job placement in the field that you studied in, which is best in class in the country. So it's an incredible asset that we have in our state. The thing that I worry about is, are we going to be prepared for all of these students coming in from Tennessee Promise? So something that we found in years past with Tennessee Achieves is that roughly 60% of the students don't go forward to the community college. They do other things. Tennessee Achieves was a backup plan. They were going to go to UT, or they got a degree to acceptance to Harvard or some other, or who knows, they might have even gone to Auburn. But they we had one board member or commissioner that's from Auburn. Sorry, so they do have other ideas. The 5,600 or so that signed up to go to a TCAT, the theory is most likely they don't have this isn't their backup plan. This is probably their only plan. You don't pick a TCAT as your choice, but then also think you're probably going to go to UT or ETSU. So we think a higher percentage of these are coming. David and Vice Chancellor King have reviewed all of this and believe that this is the plan that they put in place is going to be sufficient to help accept all these students. But I think it's just to put a spotlight on that. This is a critical part of the overall capital plan and request, and really important for us to be able to execute on this. With that, any other questions or comments? Keith?
Was included into this study, you talk about expanded new places, new programs, et cetera. Did you look at new locations? I'm constantly dumbfounded by the philosophy behind the placement of some of these campuses in rural settings outside where people actually live. And it just strikes me as being, it's particularly difficult in many cases. Locational convenience of that educational institution is huge, and transportation issue. I've got to say that some of the locations of those campuses in relation to the populations is really out of balance.
That was not. Looking at new campuses was not a part of the scope of the master plan, but the data that we put together in terms of what's going on in each region, I think is really helpful for looking at that in the future. It's not an easy decision. Some of the data we're looking at, if it's showing that there is low population growth and low, high unemployment in a rural region, does that mean it's a dangerous place to put a TCAT because that's a risk, or does that mean it's a great place to put a TCAT because of the need? So some of the data doesn't necessarily lead to easy decisions.
They're not easy, but you went to all of them.
I went to every existing campus.
So, where's Sir Goinsville?
I was at Sir Goinsville.
Chancellor Morgan, would you like to weigh in on this?
And Keith and I had a chance to talk about this a little bit earlier today, and the point's well taken. There are needs for these types of programs in places where we currently don't have them. At the same time, the utilization of the locations where we do have them fairly high. We have high enrollment and waiting list of some type or another at many of our institutions, depending on which program it is. We are, however, aggressively looking for opportunities. In fact, we are opening, or have opened up, I guess we're opening up a location in Wilson County in partnership with the Wilson County schools that will offer courses in Lebanon taught by really 3 of our TCATs, Murfreesboro, Nashville, and Hartsville. I think Hartsville will be the operator of the facility. Also Portland, Tennessee. Also there's discussions about expansion of opportunities in other parts of the state, looking at where we can acquire space. We're currently contemplating, I don't think we're on the street yet with an RFP, but we'll be very soon, if not already, looking for space around Knoxville, out in West Knoxville, where we see a real need for programs. So we're working toward trying to meet the needs where they are. But the point is that to the extent we had the resources to be able to expand these programs to more places, we would, and look forward to the conversations over the coming years on how we can do that. Geography is important. It's very important.
On that, but so a lot of the TCATs do have additional facility requests that they'd like to have additional locations: Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville. But with the lack of capital, it's forcing some innovation. So I did, for example, the TCAT in Knoxville has partnered with Pellissippi State Community College and Knox County Schools to create an additional satellite facility within a new campus out in East Knoxville. So some
I think
innovation
it's
is
ripe for partnership. That is
Yep.
one area that is absolutely ripe for partnerships.
Well, and one that we hope to, David, very soon, just within the next few weeks, the ribbon cutting or groundbreaking, I guess, the partnership between the Murfreesboro TCAT and Nissan, where we will build a joint use facility that will expand significantly our capacity here in Middle Tennessee for those programs.
No further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Lastly, Dr. Dean will share with us an ETSU master plan update.
Mr. Chairman, we heard the presentation just before lunch from the architects on the ETSU master plan. It is recommended for action. It does wrestle with some pretty important issues on the campus involving vehicular and pedestrian circulation, location of academic buildings, athletics issues. It has been thoroughly reviewed by staff, and it is recommended for approval.
So moved.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we'd like to move on to, if there's no other action business, we'll move on to some information items. So traditionally, we've always asked Troy Grant, one of the hardest working superstars within THEC, to report last on the P16 initiatives, and he's always compressed to like 2 minutes to give us some very important information. Unfortunately, Troy, we're running a little late, so if you could keep this under 2 minutes.
This is my courtesy. Keenly aware.
Dr. Rhoda put me up to that. Take as much time as you'd like.
Okay, thank you. So for those of you, most of you do know that the Office of P16 Initiatives exists to implement college access programming focused on increasing the number of low-income students, underrepresented students who are engaging in higher education and succeeding once they get there. That work started in 2005 with the first Gear Up grant. Dr. Nolan was part of that process under Dr. Rhoda's leadership. Tennessee secured the first Gear Up grant. We've grown from that initial grant to have a suite of college access resources. Each year, our office, whether through direct services or indirect services, provides services to over 10,000 students around college access and success. All that to say, Dr. Rhoda, on behalf of my team and myself, I'd like to thank you for the pleasure we have of doing that each day. But then even more so, I never want you to lose sight that there are tens of thousands of lives over these last years who have been impacted by the work that you've done here at the Commission. So with that, I would like to dive in to some of our work. So the first is the Latino Student Success Grant. So this is a grant that is funded by the Lumina Foundation. It is a place-based grant that's located in Memphis, Tennessee. It is focused, again, on increasing the number of students who are not only accessing higher education that are from the Latino population, but that are succeeding once they get there. It was, again, a Lumina-funded initiative, $600,000, starting in 2011. It's scheduled to end in 2015. This initiative, there was mentioned earlier, of collective impact, really does leverage that collective impact framework of how can we leverage a community around a common measure of success, which is increased degree attainment amongst Latino students in Memphis. A big piece of this initiative is the seeding of programmatic work. Up to this point, Latino population in Memphis is an emerging community. There isn't a lot of work focused on this population around access and success. So what we implemented, one of the many things that we implemented, was a program called Abrindo Puertas. This was a structured, intrusive mentoring program that worked in one high school initially, has spread to 5 additional high schools, and this year will be going to 6 higher education institutions, providing services to students, their families around college going. These are, by definition of the schools that we're working in, are schools that aren't producing college goers. But this population that we've worked with in the last year, we had 100% of the students that we worked with who graduated from high school. 88% of those students went on to higher education. We were able to secure with this group of students $1.8 million in financial aid for these students over their 4-year careers. And so this is life-changing not only for these students, but the narrative that it brings to the Memphis community. I think that Memphis stands as a model in terms of localizing, and we've made references to that throughout the day, of how do we take these policies and use them as tools on a local level to really mobilize and catalyze community conversation around degree attainment. And I think that Memphis has done this, and what our work has been able to contribute that, and I think Lumina's investment has been able to contribute to that, is that Latino student success is infused into the framework and the fabric of the degree completion work that's being done in Memphis. And I think that's a success that goes beyond what we've been able to do with these 75 students, although there's nothing to blink an eye at that as well. So the next piece, and I am trying to go a little quickly, College App Week. We were one of the first states to implement this initiative back in the late 2000s. It is an initiative where we partner with high schools to provide structured time during the school day for students, seniors to fill out college applications. Schools bring in volunteers from their community to help students fill out applications. We've expanded the event to not only serve high school seniors, but then to also work with the entire high school and then also middle school and elementary schools, really about building awareness of the college going process, filling out applications, and mobilizing students around the transactional things that need to happen in order to start that transition to post-secondary education. The feedback that we've received from the over 280 schools that we worked with was overwhelmingly very positive about the event. I think one thing that of note this year as opposed to previous years, we are going to be taking student level data to and look at National Student Clearinghouse data to see what kind of an impact events like this have on college going rates and eventually, sustaining towards completion. And I think that will help us not only evaluate how we implement such events, but it will help us expand those events so that they are more effective. Also of note, we've worked with Mike Krause in the governor's office to align events like College App Week with initiatives like the Tennessee Promise. The Tennessee Promise application rate during the week of College App Week was the second highest of any week during the open enrollment period except for that last week. Part of our communication was that you already have students in a lab. They're filling out those college applications. Let's take that next step to finish that Tennessee Promise application. We are going to continue to try to stitch together all of the statewide events that we do with our partners in the governor's office. Also, just to note, we are going to be working with DOHR, Jessica staff to explore possibilities of how we can extend this idea to the adult population, working with career centers. Again, there's nothing magic here. It really is just building some awareness and some momentum around the college-going process. And so we look forward to that partnership as well. So here are some student pictures from across the state. We had staff all over the state going to in excess of 15 schools to look and see how this work is being done statewide. Finally, Gear Up. Gear Up is our largest project. It's a $4.2 million grant. Again, just as a reminder, we are following a cohort of students through their first year of post-secondary education. One of the things that we want to do, as I just mentioned, is to make our Gear Up communities model Tennessee Promise communities. We want our Gear Up communities to be model Reconnect communities. So when we start talking to the parents of our students, it's a really interesting intervention to work with the parent of a student for them to go back to higher education, and then hopes that then leads to that student going on to higher education. So with the Tennessee Promise, we had over 5,000 of our students who did apply for the Tennessee Promise. We had a week where we had a focus of them filling out their applications. One of the things that we did this last year that I hope that we can then scale statewide is each week we gave each of our high schools a list of the number of students and the students' names who had filled out the application. It allowed them to do some real-time tracking of who had not filled out the application completion, so they really knew who had finished everything that they needed to do. We're going to do the same thing with FAFSA completion. So in the months of January and February, every Gear Up school will get a list of who in their school has completed the FAFSA so that they can make sure students are on track to take advantage of not only the range of federal benefits in terms of financial aid, but the Tennessee Promise as well. We've also partnered with the governor's office to develop a lot of the promotional materials that came out around the Tennessee Promise, a resource guide for schools that really was the rules, how it worked, ideas of implementing the Tennessee Promise statewide. We plan on doing similar things like that going forward with other grant programs. I will say, too, we're going to be partnering with Tennessee Achieves to offer a webinar series for mentors that will build their capacity around college going. It's great when you have over 9,000, I think that's significant actually, 9,000 adults who have said, yeah, I want to participate in this program and mentor students. One of the things that we want to do is build their capacity to do that better. So it's not just about the time you spend with students, but let's make sure those mentors do understand how the FAFSA works, or how do you work with students from diverse backgrounds. And we're going to have a webinar series in partnership with Tennessee Achieves to build that capacity. Gear Up Innovation Grants, we received approval from the U.S. Department of Ed to take a portion of our Gear Up funds and to subgrant them as innovation fund grants. What we asked our sites to do were to identify some very strategic measures that they would like to move that are aligned with the Gear Up Tennessee grant. We then funded we are in the process of, I should say, funding 6 of those proposals. We received 19 of them. You can see a list of them here. I won't go into them per se, but the types of things that they are doing are differentiated, targeted instruction to make sure that students are testing proficient in literacy and reading, for instance, or meeting ACT benchmarks. We're doing mentoring projects with African American males in the Nashville area. So very targeted interventions that we will have some pre and post data to measure what has been successful in hopes of, within our Gear Up cohort, identifying promising practice and scale that to the rest of our sites. So we're excited. I think it's a really good investment. I mean, we have an option here where we could have kept those funds here at the state level. We thought the best thing was to partner with our local communities, drive some innovation there, find what works, and then scale it. During the academic year thus far, we have provided services to over 11,000 students, accounting for nearly 100,000 hours of services. We've done professional development for about 150 educators thus far this year. We are finalizing the Gear Up Innovation Grants. We will be launching Path to College events. In addition to College App Week, we're going to be piloting a statewide college signing day where communities will gather around and celebrate those students who are transitioning to higher education. We are also working on a parent night where high school juniors and their parents will be invited to schools to learn everything they need to know about the college going process. We'll package that for them, give them the resources they need in order to implement it well. And so we're excited about where that will go. We have an outreach campaign. One of the things that we have found is that many of the communities that we work in, students don't know college graduates outside of those who are in their schools. They know teachers went to college, but they don't see successful versions of themselves. So we have scoured the state working with TBR and UT to identify traditional age students, adult age students who are not your A++ students. These are students who have struggled in higher education, who have struggled to get to higher education. We're taking videos of them, we're profiling them, and they will be part of an outreach campaign that we will start deploying later on this academic year. So we're excited about that. And then finally, we'll be planning our youth summit. I look forward to reporting on our time in the college dorms next summer. So with that, I will open it up for any questions that you have that I might be able to answer.
Troy, thank you.
So that's what a Troy presentation is like when you give him more than a minute. I will say, and they know this, but Troy and his staff are the best when it comes to putting things together and leveraging, putting programs together where they make the best out of both, and that's been true of that the Gear Up, the P16 initiative staff from the very beginning, and of which I want to recognize that with us is Wendy Blackmore, who is one of the original Gear Up staff members. Glad you're here, Wendy.
So Victoria was so excited to share her presentation, she jumped ahead of Herbert, but that's fine. We're all excited. So the 2014 report card on effectiveness of teacher training programs, Ms. Victoria Harpole.
Thank you, Chairman Boyd, Dr. Rhoda, members of the commission. So I'll present to you today some of the findings from our 2014 report card on the effectiveness of teacher training programs. One of the things that came up earlier today was get students ready, get them in college, and get them out of college. And this is one of the important steps of getting them ready for college, is having each student with a high-quality K-12 teacher. And this is one of the ways that we look at how we get there in preparing those high-quality teachers. So the report is required by statute. We're very lucky here at THEC to work with the State Board and the Department of Education in the creation of this report. By statute, we have to look at three things. So the performance on the praxis exam, which is the licensing exam, the placement and retention rates of teachers once they enter the classroom, and the value-added data of those teachers. So kind of a look at the state. We've always, for the last few years, had around roughly 5,000 new teachers graduate. By and large, they are coming from our higher ed institutions. So we hear a lot about alternative programs and alternative ways of getting your teaching certification. If you want to move the needle in the state of Tennessee, you need to look at your higher education institutions. This is where 90% of our new teachers are coming from. The pathway that they're taking, most of them are earning a bachelor's degree at the time that they receive their license. So again, if you want to talk about changing things for Tennessee, you're going to be looking at our higher education institutions, and for the most part, those coming out with a bachelor's degree. These are some of our largest producing institutions in the state. You'll see a lot of our public programs are on here, but we do also have our TECUA programs and some alternative programs in the state. In education, we tend to still remain a largely white female group of educators going into elementary education. So consistently, we've had elementary education be the largest area where we endorse new teachers. Something to note here, STEM endorsements are now 10% of our new teachers going into the field. This is on the rise. It's been over a number of state initiatives at our higher ed programs with the Department of Education and here at THEC to try to meet that need that we know exists for having high quality STEM teachers. We're up about 2% from where we were 5 years ago. So when you look at the STEM endorsements, mostly math and biology, but we're gaining slowly in some of these other areas as well. So our praxis pass rates, by and large, we pass the praxis, which is great. That's our licensing exam. We've consistently done so. Placement retention, about 50% of teachers stay in the field of teaching 3 out of 4 years after they've completed their degree. This is lower than what we would maybe like to see. Teaching is not a profession that people are staying in for lifetime careers at the same rate that they used to, but it is on average equivalent to what we're seeing as nationwide trends. The third piece is the value-added portion that's attributed back. So this looks at how teachers are doing with the K-12 students that are in their classrooms and the amount of growth that's occurring with those students over that year. So there's 3 comparisons. We look at a statewide comparison, so how are those teachers doing compared to the average teacher in the state? How are those beginning teachers doing compared to one another? And then kind of a statewide distribution of how they're falling on that bell curve. So this is the statewide results. So where you would see those negatives or where you see nothing is, I guess, to me, the bigger story here, where there's not an indicator under statistically significant. That's meaning is that in those 8 areas, our brand new teachers are performing at the same level as the average teacher statewide. That's something to celebrate. Okay? And in those 8 areas, our brand new teachers are doing as well as the average teacher in the state. That is definitely a point of celebration for our higher ed institutions and our teacher training program statewide. This is just a look really quickly at our state, our public institutions, and so the number of completers, as you can see, varies, but definitely some of our largest producing institutions. The overall look at their positive and negative value-added growth, their praxis pass rates, and then the average time that they're staying in the profession. And of course, it varies from somewhat significantly between institutions. Something that we can see in looking, and this is not just coming up in this year's report, but it has consistently come up, is that we have some institutions that are continuously really knocking it out of the park. And something that's important to point out here is that there's not one type of institution that's really the way to train teachers. What we can gather from this is that it's really dependent upon the quality of instruction that they receive. Public or private, small or large, traditional program or an alternative program, really it is completely dependent upon the quality of instruction that they receive. There's not one pathway or one kind of silver bullet that we have for education that's going to say this is the way to train teachers. In groups on this list really have made dedication to using data to transform their programs to do the best for K-12 students in the state. So something that we use each year to follow up with the reports that go out publicly is the legislature now allows us to give individual growth scores back to the teacher training programs so that they can use it to improve their programs. And so this goes out each year. It'll be out this year in January for your campuses. So they can take a look at those value-added scores and see how they can use this data to improve their program. Is there something that they can do differently to impact the results that K-12 students are seeing? Questions?
Could you possibly go back to the slide? I just want to get the appropriate context about our new teachers doing just as well as current teachers.
Yes.
And maybe this is like counterintuitive and it's kind of hard for me to grasp this conceptually, but would we not expect teachers who've been teaching for a little bit longer to do well or to do better than new teachers? So of course we want new teachers to perform, and we wouldn't want the gap to be that large. But I mean, what do we make of those conclusions? I mean, you think it's really successful. Why is that?
I think it has a lot to do with the training that they receive, and there are some initiatives going on around the state that really have focused on high-quality teacher training, getting the resources that students need into the classroom, and I think it also has to do with the amount of access to high-quality data that the programs have gotten over the last few years to really, we're not making guesswork anymore about what might help students. We have the data, we're able to give it back to higher ed institutions, and they're making improvements based on that. And yes, we would expect our longtime teachers to be able to perform at a higher level than the brand new ones in the classroom. But the fact that there are 8 places where our new guys are doing just as well as our than the average teacher in the state is very high praise to our training programs. Yes. It is an alternative training program that partners a nonprofit group, and they partner with Union University, and it uses a year-long residency in which they take classes at a university and are trained by the nonprofit organization.
Questions? To report on the improving teacher quality grants, Mr. Herbert Brown. Also another Vol for life.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rhoda, and members of the commission, I'll be very brief in this presenting this information item. The Improving Teacher Quality Grant is an amazing program that provides an opportunity for THEC institutions from the UT system, TBR, and TACUA to directly engage with our K through 12 partners. And it also provides an opportunity for us to continue to close the gap between higher education and K-12. I guess I'll give you an overview of the program. The program basically provides high-quality professional development to K through 12 teachers in high-need districts. A high-need district is determined by the poverty level, the poverty rate of the district and the performance of the teachers within the district. And these strict guidelines were established by the No Child Left Behind Act, the legislation. The Improving Teacher Quality Grant requires a three-tier partnership between the High Need District, the College of Arts and Science, and the College of Education. Each year we work directly with the Department of Education to determine the focus for the grant. So when I say the focus, the subject that we will focus on and the grade band, if you will, that will receive the professional development. This year we determined that math for elementary and middle school teachers would be the focus. And this focus directly aligns and impacts our state's efforts to increase STEM learning environments. So it's a great project, very great project. One may say, why is higher education involved? Very unique partner. Well, if you sit and think, higher education institutions have the resources to provide high quality and cutting edge professional development to K through 12 teachers. When you think of a College of Arts and Science, they have the math faculty. And if you think about the College of Education, they have faculty that can provide the pedagogy that basically will provide the high quality professional development to the K through 12 teachers. We convened a selection committee here at THEC, K through 12 and higher education experts. The list of the committee could be found in item 2C in your notebooks. There are numerous members of the committee here. I would like to thank you for your hard work and everything that you did in the selection process. Also, here at THEC, we rely heavily on our graduate assistants, and I would like to take this time to thank Courtney. She was amazing, phenomenal. She was great, and she really provided insight and a lot of hard work with this project. The selection committee reviewed and evaluated 22 proposals, and the proposals were based on 5 different criteria. And basically, the committee recommended 14 proposals. As you can see, there is geographical parity. So teachers in Memphis, teachers in Johnson City will receive high quality professional development through this grant. It's amazing. Again, I say it allows higher education in K through 12 to basically directly engage, which ultimately will help increase student achievement. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Herbert. And finally, a very short report from Philip Kramer on the implementation plan update and compliance report. Philip.
Afternoon, Chairman. I'm presenting on item 2E. It's the Title VI Anti-Discrimination Implementation Plan and Report. A little bit of background, it is from the 1964 Civil Rights Act, forbidding discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. In Tennessee, the Human Rights Commission oversees all of the implementation plans, and every state agency has to submit an annual report. Part of the monitoring is that, is submitted in October. Not have any findings, and there were no lawsuits filed, so that is the very basic overview of what we had. Are there any questions, very quickly?
We love that. Excellent report.
Thank you.
Good report.
Any questions on that? Great report, Philip. We'll be expecting, you set a precedent now, so we'll be expecting that kind of report every time. Super. So I think it's all the business that we had on the agenda. Just to mention to the commission members that we did talk about having some time to discuss future policy possibilities such as out-of-state tuition changes, possibly a 15 to finish initiative. Both those two things hopefully we'll have on the agenda at the next meeting. It won't be it's not necessarily limited to that, but we'll at least make sure that we have time to begin to have some of those discussions, and hopefully we'll be able to weigh in with our systems on both those topics in between as well. So look forward to those conversations. Is there any other business? Just a quick reminder that we do have the calendar for the next meetings for next year in your book. In addition, don't forget, on January 8th, we have the Dr. Rhoda Appreciation Dinner. And so we'll make sure that you're all there for that. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
John, ready to go.
Enjoy your